name is Elisabetha Fischer in the SCA. I built this class out of a lot of questions that were coming to me about how to build a class while keeping all of the rules that we have in mind, and how to keep up with all of the paperwork that we require in the Middle Kingdom for events. So that's what a lot of the focus is going to be on. You're welcome to ask questions. Hopefully I cover everything you might have questions about. Just the briefest about me, because I hate this slide. I've been in the SCA for about 20 years. I've been event steward for a bunch of events. I've been on staff for a lot of events. And then also in like my regular life, I've planned a bunch of different types of events, performances, lectures, and then workshops that were like singular and all the way up through like multi-day seminars. So this class is kind of a mix of like real life experience and what's worked in some of those venues, and information from the handbooks that we have for the SCA and for the Middle Kingdom, and my experience building events inside the SCA. So, first question is, what exactly does the event steward do? And what is the requirement to be one? So first and foremost, you do have to be a paid SCA member to be an event steward. Your membership has to go through the event. And you become a deputy to the host group's seneschal for the event itself, like the day of. And basically you're in charge of the organization and the execution of the event, and keeping all of the department heads like in their departments doing what they need to be doing. So when you decide you want to be an event steward and you want to have an event, the first thing to think about is, what is the goal? So do I want to have a certain theme or a certain focus? And by that, I mean, do I want to do an all bardic event? Do I want to do an all fighting event? Do I want to do an event that has a little bit of everything? So if you pick your focus, or you pick your theme and say, I want to do an event that is 15th century England, anything, you just pick a topic. Some events don't have a centralized theme. Some are just kind of a little bit everything. But there's a lot of fun to be had with the ones that are kind of focused in one direction or another. So you have some options for sure. So after you decide on your goals for the event, the next thing is, what is my budget going to be? Budget is a huge, 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 huge factor. So what is reasonable and what is logical? And I put those as separate because they're slightly different. When I say what is reasonable, what is logical, I'm asking, how much money does my group have in the bank? How much of that is logical to spend to have an event, given what we're going to make back at the event? So if my group is going to host an event, it doesn't make sense to, because I guess I should have said that, I'm from a very small group. So if I want to host an event and we want to blow a ton of money to actually host the event, to pay for the site, to pay for the feast, we may not get that money back because we're smaller and we're out a little bit further and we don't get high volumes of attendance. So it doesn't make sense to spend more than we're going to get covered with site fees and feast costs and things like that. So those are the kinds of questions you need to ask yourself when you start working on your budget. And decide what's worth a risk and what isn't. Maybe you can do a little bit higher on your site cost because you can save money on your feast costs or something like that. So you just kind of have to realistically look at what you have to work with, both monetarily and geographically. And is your group really established? Do you host events all the time? Are people used to coming out to you? Those kind of things. And then you just start filling in numbers from there. As far as budget guides go, there are a couple of different ones out on the internet. If you Google SCA event proposal, you will get one that's not too bad. You might get a couple others. There's one that pops up that is like a PDF that you can like fill in, which I've heard people like. But we do have a more official one that's in the Exchequer documents, and that's the one I'm going to talk about. But first and foremost, check with your local charter rules and see, you know, what are your requirements for when you present your event proposal. They may have a certain way that they want it presented, so you want to make sure that you're not making more work for yourself and having to redo it later. So again, be realistic when you're filling these out with your costs out and your projected income back, and also with the costs for attendees. You know, you don't want to have a site cost that's like $40 for a one-day event. Like, people aren't going to want to drive in, right? So be realistic with those kind of things as well when you're making your budget. So this is the budget form that we have in the Exchequer documents. If you see on my PowerPoint LOD, that means Library of Documents. That's where you can find this. It's under Exchequer and under Event Forms. You go Library of Documents, Exchequer, Event Forms, and it's called Event Bid and Report. It is page 1. It's an Excel spreadsheet. I guess Excel calls them sheets, but it's the first sheet on there. And this one is really great because it really kind of covers everything. And the nice thing about this too is if you present this, you can have at the bottom, I don't know if you guys can see my cursor or not, but at the bottom here, if your group approves it, you can actually have your signatures there for your record saying, my event's been approved, here's the Seneschal signature, here's the Exchequer signature, here's my signature, these are the numbers that everyone's agreed upon. So it's a nice little tidy bundle for you. So that's why I like this one. You should be aware of profit splits. There are a couple of types of events that have a profit split. The biggest one is going to be anything that's kingdom level. So like crown tourneys and coronations, those kind of things. There's a percentage split with the kingdom that they get a portion of the money. So make sure you factor that into your budget. And also multi-group events. So let's say maybe your group is smaller, but you want to host an event. So you call your neighbor and you're like, hey buddy, want to host an event together? We could split the profits. Then you split the profits. It's not that big of a deal to figure out the math because it's really just a percentage. So, but you should be aware of it when you're doing your budget. Okay. So I've decided on preliminary budget ideas. I'm going to do this thing, start looking for a site. Things to consider when you're looking for a site. The biggest one is going to be your budget and the space needs. So what are we doing and what do I need space for? Am I going to have fighting? Am I going to have classes? Am I going to have a feast? Does it have a kitchen? Does it have a space to set up a feast or a space for a court to be set up if I'm going to invite royals? Analyze your space needs and make sure that your site fits those needs. Also make sure that the budget is still in check. And a lot of times you can just get a phone call. You call the space, ask for information. You can get budget information without any sort of commitment. So it's not that stressful, but always remember that, you know, you're potentially starting a relationship with this group or this business, this place. So keep that in mind when you make that initial phone call, because that is your first impression for the group. Ask them about things like deposits and contracts. And keep in mind that contracts for the Middle Kingdom, I believe actually for all SCA, I'd have to double check that, but I know for sure in the Middle Kingdom, the Seneschal for the group has to sign your contracts. So keep that in mind when you actually go to do your contracts. Now, there's one site that my group uses a lot that they want the site liaison to be like the contact person on the contracts. So what we do is we have actually added a line that says SCA local group seneschal so that they can sign it verifying that they have seen the contract and that it has been agreed upon by the group. And that is always an option to ask the site if they won't let your seneschal be the only person, if they want like a site contact. Sometimes churches will do that, like they want a member of the church to be the contact person. So you can work with it, just make sure that the seneschal signature is on there one way or another. And definitely ask them about restrictions. A big one is going to be things like alcohol. We've had sites where even cooking with alcohol wasn't allowed. And we've had sites where, like, we hosted a regional A&S and we couldn't have brewing on site because they didn't allow alcohol. So we had to come up with an alternative for the A&S. But things like that, ask them, what are the restrictions? What are rooms that I can't use? What are there times that I can't use certain parts of this? You know, maybe somebody's coming in to set up something for another event or taking down from an event before you. So these are all questions to ask. Also ask them what items are available to use, and that lets you know what you're going to have to bring in. Big one on this is going to be things like tables and chairs. So definitely ask what's there. Kitchen equipment. I've seen some sites that had kitchens, like big glorious kitchens, but like no pots and pans. So all of these things, much better to know in advance because you can work with it in advance. But if you arrive on the day of and you have no pots and pans, it's going to be an adventure. Definitely ask them what time the site is available to use. If you're having a one-day event, it is absolutely awesome if you can get in the night before, because there are just so many things that you can set up in advance, you can drop off in advance. Even just dropping stuff off, it takes some of the stress off of the next day. Because I have already dumped everything on site, I've seen it all drop. I'm not missing anything that I can think of, or I am missing something and I'm gonna go put it in my car right now. So if you can get in there that night before, it can make a big difference. If it's a multi-day event that maybe starts in the evening on like a Friday, see if you can get in like Monday morning or not Monday, Friday morning, Friday afternoon. Get in ahead of the game enough that you've got some time to make adjustments as you need to. And also when you're asking about sites, remember that we are a nonprofit and there are sites that will offer discounts for nonprofits. There are also sites that only offer space use to nonprofits. So sometimes you can get really cool sites because they only cater to nonprofits. So just a few things to think about for your site. All right, expenses. Oops, sorry, I've got to shift here. So officially on the paperwork that you're going to end up filling out later, this is how expenses are listed. So that's why I wanted to put this up there so you could see these words and be familiar with them. Occupancy is the one that's confusing. That is your site cost. So if you think about it, I guess it's not confusing. But first time I saw that, I was like, occupancy, what on earth? So food is going to be most likely your feast, maybe a lunch, depending on what you're doing. Printing costs, programs, signs for site, those kind of things. Postage if you're mailing anything. Occupancy is the site. Supplies is going to be things like pens, markers, tape, miscellaneous stuff like that. And then equipment rental, typically equipment rental is things like porta pots. If you're having an outdoor event, you have to rent like porta pots for it. So these are like, this is how the expenses get broken down for your exchequer later, which is why I like to throw them in here so you can kind of see how they're broken up. Okay, so we've got all that. Now we're going to present our proposal to our local group in accordance with the procedures for presenting event proposals. Typically, you need at minimum the event steward and the feast steward in place when you present this bid. It makes sense because those are going to be your biggest expenses are involved with those two people. And I always tell people to try to anticipate questions. And if you haven't anticipated something, write down questions that people are asking that need to be answered before they feel comfortable saying yes or no to your proposal. Even if they're willing to say yes, but hey, I'd like some more information, make sure you get that information so that they keep confidence in you that you're gonna keep them all up to date. After you get approval, then you can move forward with all the details. Okay. One quick side note, because we talked about budget and I wanted to kind of bundle them together. Keep track of everything. You don't want to go over budget, but the reality is budget technically is a theoretical number and things can change. Like maybe your site costs, something else came up where you didn't realize there was this extra fee involved, or food costs changed, you know, something like that. What you can do is go back and reassess your budget and see if you can, first off, make an alternative plan. You know, can this money come from somewhere else that we've already been approved, you know, so it's still under our umbrella of money? Can I make an alternative plan? So if beef is suddenly really expensive, well, can we do chicken instead? You know, something like that. Come up with an alternative plan so that you keep within the budget you've already been approved of. And if you're not going to keep under there, you can go back to your group and your financial committee and ask for a revision of the budget. I would not recommend doing that as an easily done, whatevs kind of thing. I would definitely say try to keep to your budget, but understand that sometimes these things do happen, and the best way to handle them is to be open up front about them and fix the problem before it's a problem. So that's my tiny spiel about budgets. Oh, hello, sorry. Okay, so I don't know about you guys, but I'm a list maker. So here's my list of lists. Greatly amused my sister when I told her I was putting that on here. I keep a binder. I'll show you if you can see me in the corner. This is a binder of the local event that I have event stewarded for the last 5 years. I keep everything because I'm here to tell you that the next time you host something, it is phenomenal to go back and go, yeah, how much did that cost the last time? Or yeah, we used this company and I got a quote at this, but this other company had a quote of that. I keep everything. So I have stuff in hard copy in like a binder, and then I keep some stuff on my computer. The things I keep on my computer are things like stuff that I have to print, because frequently stuff that has to be printed for one event will have to be printed for all events. Like the one site that we use doesn't have alcohol, so I have signs that are nice and pretty that say no alcohol allowed on site. And I know, I just have to print them every time that we use that site. So things like that. The bullying policy, the bullying harassment policy, because it gets posted at L gates, which we're going to talk about in a bit. I just keep that on my computer inside of a file for the event, because then the next time I can just click on it and print, and it's easy. I also keep all my meeting notes. So if somebody says, well, when did we discuss that? I can flip back and go, oh, at the July meeting, we talked about this, and in August, we approved it. So if you have those records, it makes it easier to follow up on things later. In addition to that, I make lists for all of the things that are on the left side there. A timeline leading up to the event. I like a year timeline. You can certainly do less. I don't recommend doing any more or any less than like 9 months, but I like to plan for a year. There's a good amount of stuff that you won't do in like the first 6 months or so. A lot of things are theoretical. Like, we want to do this, this, and this. Let's start organizing this. Okay, you start planning that. And then you get to like the 6 months before and things actually start really happening and people are physically making items and physically creating things and stuff's going up on the internet and conversations are being had online about publicity and things like that. So give yourself enough time to make it a good event. I have a list of all of the departments and who's in charge of each one. That way I can easily go, oh, that's a Marshall question. And oh, that's them right there. I have a list of the shopping requirements for both the event steward and sometimes the feast steward, depending on who's doing feast. I have been asked to support with the shopping because I'm good at list making and some people aren't as good at list making and they need that backup support. To-do lists kind of go with the timeline. So you can say, we need to make feast tokens at this time, make sure they're done by this time. Or I need to start advertising for merchants. I need to start advertising an A&S competition. I need to remember to pack the coffee maker in my car, you know, those kind of things. The to-print list, I talked about that a little bit. It's going to be things like signage for around site, programs, those kind of things. A list of what has to be brought in, which coincides with what the site has already there and what they don't have, and then who has what. So if I know that I need to have 4 water coolers, I say, okay, well, so-and-so has 1 and so-and-so has 2 and so-and-so has 1. And I know those 3 people are bringing the 4 water coolers and I will make sure to touch base with them closer to. That way I'm not having to remember all these things in my head. You can make a list of anything else you want, whatever makes you happy, whatever works for you. And I also highly suggest making a map of your site and on your map, putting where everything should go. When you go to set up, that map is your best friend. And if you have access to a copy machine, you can make copies for your setup crew and you don't singularly have to be standing there directing all the traffic. You can just be like, ta-da, here it is. And they roll with it and it's amazing. Okay. So here are all of the departments that I typically have. Something just did something. We still good? Okay, sorry. I got like a notice on my screen. Okay, so these are the typical departments that I would have at just kind of a generic, we're doing a little bit of everything kind of event. If you're doing like a kingdom level event or like TOA or something like that, or TOC, things get a little bit different. Or if you're doing something that's like only bardic, only dancing, only fighting, things change a little. So this is again for like, we're gonna do a little bit of everything kind of event. So I'm not gonna necessarily read all of them because I'm gonna discuss all of them, but this is a good list of everybody.
Oh, we've had a note from Melissa Harris saying, just a quick note, I had to go look it up to make sure I was remembering it correctly. I found event stewards are allowed to sign contracts as long as they follow criteria in the Seneschal Handbook, section 13.
Yes, and what that says is that your Seneschal has to have like a notarized paper on file that says that you have been authorized to sign the contract.
Sounds cool.
Thank you for reminding me. I do know the rule, but yes, thank you for reminding me. I've always found it easier to just have the Seneschal sign with me. Okay. Okay, so feast steward, they're going to be in charge of creating that menu, creating that budget. They're definitely going to work with the event steward on that budget for sure, because your event as a whole includes all of the money, right? Not just one section and another section. Things to keep in mind are the number of people you're going to have seated. You need to have kitchen staff. I always say kitchen staff plus volunteers because that's what I've seen work the best. And what that means is I have a couple people that just really want to be in the kitchen all day. And they understand the menu, they understand our timeline and our schedule, they understand how we're going to roll with this. And then your volunteers on top of that are people that have signed up for like an hour shift, or there's people that walk by and go, how you doing in here? Need any help? And you go, yes, get in here now. You know, those kind of people. So that's that distinction between the two. Servers, you're going to need for actual serving of the feast. And I always recommend having a head server so that you have somebody that's kind of in charge of your servers. Because your feast steward is working on the food portion, and it's just one less thing that they need to stress about if you've got somebody in charge of getting that food all the way out the door. Always have ingredient lists for everything and stick to them. You know, it's so easy in this day and age, really, especially, we'll say, oh, it needs a little something, I'll just throw some garlic in. And then the next thing you know, somebody who's got a garlic allergy who checked the ingredient list before is now having a problem. So make sure you have your ingredient list and stick to them. I always recommend having a variety of foods because people have those food allergies. I know for me personally, I'll use myself as an example, there are things that I can't eat. So I always get excited when a feast isn't like all beef or all, you know, all of one thing. If there's a couple dishes here and there that I can't eat, I'm not going to stress about it. I still feel like I get to be a part of the experience. If there's enough to make it worth my while, I like the atmosphere. So if you have a variety of foods, you're going to draw more people in. Creating a schedule for the day, that's going to be a schedule of how to get things cooked, like an order of which they need to be cooked. You know, this can be done and then it goes in the fridge because it's got to cool off. This needs to be served hot, so we do it closer to, those kind of things. And anything that you can prep ahead will save you time and stress the day of, because sometimes things just don't go as planned. The last event that I was a steward for in February, we had one of the big, you know, like the big industrial oven stove situations that you have in like a nice activity kitchen. We lost half of the oven space because a pilot light or something went out. And we were without half of our oven for 3 hours. And that changed all of our games until we found a very, very, very tall person who could reach the very back of the oven and light it for us. So yeah, sometimes having that stuff prepped ahead, that saves you the time that you have to adjust later. So good thing. And then feast tokens. I know when I started in the SCA, tokens were totally a thing, and people would have their feast baskets, and you would like hang them on the side of your feast basket, and it was an exciting thing. And I see some sites don't do tokens anymore. Some still do. I like them. You can use your own judgment, see if they're in the budget. Sometimes people will donate things towards them, and you don't even have to worry about them coming out of your budget. So, you know, you can kind of work with it and keep it reasonable. Okay, so we're going to start talking about gate. Gate is the other big important thing when it comes to planning and execution, because that's where all your money is, and it's very important to keep track of everything. Ultimately, your exchequer is in charge of gate. Whether they are running gate is a different question, but the exchequer is in charge of gate one way or another because they are the money person for your event. Now they can say this person's gonna run gate. That's fine. They can designate somebody else, but they are ultimately responsible, so they need to be comfortable with whoever's in charge. The person in charge has to be a paid adult member if they're in charge and handling money. Minors can work at gate. However, they cannot be in charge of money. Like they can't be in charge of gate itself. So I have been asked that a couple of times because I've got a couple teenagers that they like telling people to sign here. Well, I'm telling you, those teenagers can tell people to sign here all day long. Your paperwork at gate is going to be your sign-in sheet and all of your waivers. I don't have copies of all of the waivers in here because your Exchequer is going to have them. If you need them, they're all under the Exchequer documents. But I figure most of us have seen these because we've signed in at an event probably. And they're the same across the board. You have that like multi-person sign in, and then you have all your waivers. If you have equestrian at your event, there is a separate waiver, like an additional waiver that has to be signed when horses are at your event. I have never actually had to do that myself, but I have been to events where they have had horses, and I've seen it happen. Get cash for change in advance. Don't forget to do this, because sometimes banks aren't open early when you get up to go to your event and you have forgotten to get change. So you don't want to get it too early because you don't want to hold on to that money. But like the day before the event, get that taken care of on a work day during normal business hours so you're good to go. Have a cash box. Best if you have a cash box that locks. They're not that expensive. There is a Cashbox log we're going to talk about. The bully and harassment policy is required to be posted at gate. That is one of our requirements. And I always recommend to have all of your activity costs printed like on a nice little sheet and with a note saying like checks made out to SCA Inc-Shire of whatever, you know, whatever your checks need to be made out of. If you put that there, people will see that ahead of time as they're standing in line, and they'll start writing those checks ahead of time, and it saves time in the long run. Have a site token, have a feast token, have a lunch token, have your programs. All of these things are going to be at gate because you're going to be handing them to people. Comp lists, if any, typically that's going to be if you have royalty there. You'll end up doing an opening and closing count. We're going to talk about that in a minute. And I'm going to talk about a checklist that our group uses that I really like, and my Exchequer has said that it makes life less stressful, so I'm going to share it with you. And then I also recommend having local emergency information just on a paper, kind of tucked away, in case somebody comes up. Gate becomes this like centralized question area as the day proceeds, and there's not a line there. And if somebody says, yeah, you know, I just really need to find a Walgreens so I can get some cough syrup or whatever the case may be, you know, or I need to go to a Ready-Med because I stubbed my toe, I dropped my helm on my foot, I don't know, whatever the case may be. Have the local emergency info, things like urgent cares, local pharmacies, hospitals, those kind of things. Just print out a sheet real quick and easy and just have it there in case somebody asks. Always better to have and not need than to be searching for the info later. Pre-registration. You don't have to have pre-registration. If you do, checks, I hope nobody's sending cash, but it is in the handbook. All cash and checks needs to be deposited within 7 days. There is a max of 14 days on that, but it is suggested to be done within 7. A list of all checks needs to be kept with the name, amount, and check number as a minimum, address and phone number if you have it, and if you can, making a copy of the check. If you're going to use PayPal, which I'm not sure if we had stopped doing that to readjust the rules. I have never done PayPal. I do not have the training for it. I know there is specific training involved with it. Make sure if you're going to do anything like that, that you look up whatever the current rules are. And I say current rules because I didn't want to put this in here and then have someone see it later, because I know that's something that is continuously changing just a little bit as they're trying to work it out. Okay, so this was that checklist that I was talking about. The piece on the side here on the left, we have all of this information on just a little strip. You can print like 6 to a page and cut them out. And if you have your person at the start of the line putting these notes in them and then handing it down the line as it goes, when it gets down to the person with the cash, they can look at it and go, oh, this is your total. They're not going, okay, so you said 1 adult plus feast plus lunch, that's, you know, they've got that slip. It's right there. The other cool thing is later when you go to balance your books, you can double check them because you'll have all those slips with the totals on them. So that's why we like to use those. It has made a lot of things run smoother in the long run. Okay, Cashbox. Again, don't forget to get change. There is a cash change of custody form that has to be filled out, and there's a Cashbox log form. I'm going to show you both of those here in a minute. Remember that nothing gets reimbursed out of the Cashbox. And if somebody needs a refund for any reason, like they sent a pre-reg and then maybe they sent a pre-reg for 2 people and only one of them showed up to the event, you cannot give them cash out of the box. You have to later write them a check for the refunded money after their check is cleared, which if it was a pre-reg, it would have already cleared. But point being, don't take money out of the cash box to pay for anything because it will screw up your books later, and it is actually against our rules. This is the cash chain of custody form. The exchequer and the event steward are the ones that fill this out. You can see where it is located. It is under the exchequer files, again, in the library of documents. And you can see it has the starting count, what you started with. You have the ending count, what you ended with. Both of you have to sign off on it that you have verified that that is correct. This is your Cashbock log form, located in the same spot. The thing to keep in mind with this is anytime that the box changes hands, it has to be recounted. It is my recommendation, based on my experience, to have one person in charge of this box for the duration of gate being open. If that is not possible, make it the smallest amount of people switching hands as possible. Because if you, like, you literally have to stop taking money to count the box, which means you have to stop gate and say, sorry guys, hold up, gotta count the box. So it creates a stagger in your system. And also the more times it changes hands, the more likely there could be an error somewhere. So that is my recommendation. It is not a requirement. As you can see, we have this form for cases where it isn't, but it's definitely my recommendation. Okay, program. I always recommend having programs. Some sites don't. Some sites are saying, well, just go on the website and look it up. And I'm here to tell you that not everybody wants to have their phone out. Not everybody has a smartphone. I know people without them still. Not everybody has data they want to use or good signal. So having a paper program is the best thing all around. Definitely have that information up online though, if somebody wants to use it that way. But it's going to be the most accessible if you actually have a physical program. And my quick spiel on that, make sure that you can read it. If you try to save space and save paper by shrinking down your font and nobody can read it, you haven't done anything, because people will pick it up and go, yep, can't read that, and throw it on the table, and nobody will use it. So make sure you can read it. Watch your fonts, watch your colors for people that have eye problems. Any publications that you are handing out have to have the bullying harassment policy on it as well. So it has to be posted at gate and it has to be on all publications. So keep those 2 things in mind. This is the bullying harassment policy. You can find it online pretty easy. If you don't get the link here, you can just type in SCA.org harassment and bullying policy into Google and it'll like take you right to it. This image, the link on the bottom here, down here, is this image. It's a nice little neat, pretty printout that you can just hit print and go, boop, done. So yeah, it must be on at gate and on all handouts. I usually post one on the door too, just to make sure people saw it. All right, so now I'm gonna kind of quickly go through all the departments so I don't run myself out of time. Marshal in charge. We have a lot of different marshaling activities, so depending on what your event is doing is going to determine how many people you have. I have hosted events where I had one marshal in charge because I only had two things. I had heavy and rapier, and they were a marshal for both, and they were going to be in charge of both, and it was easy peasy, done, finished. But if you've got all of them, you might have 5 different marshals in charge. Point is that you want to have somebody in charge of each discipline. Discuss their space and needs with them. You know, do you need a table? Do you need ropes? Do you need space behind you because you're archery, so you have rules about your setup? Discuss all of these things so that everybody's on the same page, and then make a list of what they're going to need. Do they need a list table? Do they need snack space? Do they need coolers? Make sure you include gear space because people are going to put their stuff somewhere nearby. And then create a schedule of activities that works for everybody and discuss their volunteer needs so that any volunteers they need, like someone to run the list table, gets put in with the volunteers, and remind them they have post-event paperwork to do. Newcomers Point is going to be your welcome area. I like to have some snackage there, coffee, tea, and things like granola bars. Just there's something welcoming about food in the morning when you've driven a long way to get to an event and you're tired and someone says, here, have a muffin and some coffee. You're immediately like welcomed into their home, you know. Good stuff to have there is going to be SCA and local info if you've got new people, and your gold key, that's your like your garb, loaner garb, that kind of thing. Have a method for checking in and out. Keep track of, you know, who took out what, those kind of things. Arts and science, that's a big umbrella category. We have a lot of different things that are covered by arts and science. Most of the time it's going to be competitions and displays, but it might be other activities as well. There's a lot of things you can do under that. Classes, decide what kind of space you're willing to give to classes and make a list. That's where I always start with everything. If I have 5 classrooms and I'm going to run classes from, you know, this time to that time, that's this many hours. So I can have that times 5. I can have X number of class hours in the day. That's how many classes you can take. Create your schedule. As you get classes coming in, people sign up for them. Make sure that you label all the rooms so that they're easy to find. And don't forget sign-in sheets. I'm going to say this is kind of a newer thing, but post-event, your local MOAS needs to put into the ANS activity database all of the classes. So if you have a sign-in sheet, that makes their life so much easier. The one that I have, which I did not link to here, it's very basic. It just says class name, instructor name, and then it has a bunch of lines for people to sign in. And they can either sign in or they can just be like a head count. They can just write 4 people and put that on there if people don't actually want to like physically sign in. But when they go to put in that entry into the database, they need the number of people, the title of the class, and the instructor as a minimum. Lunch. Lunch is very much like feast, but tiny, because you're not feeding people and you're not serving them typically. I mean, you could, but typically we don't. It's kind of a drive-by kind of situation where you've got like a window set up or a table set up, something like that. Again, you're going to create a menu, have the specific number of people you're aiming to serve. Tokens are awesome because people can present their token like, I paid for money. Again, have a schedule for execution. If you have stuff that has to be cooked, make sure you are not conflicting with space with your feast prep. So keep that in mind. And again, have an ingredient list for allergies. And I always tell people keep it simple, but also have some variety, again, because the more variety you have, the more people are going to buy lunch from you. Merchants, decide where you're going to set them up, how many tables you can host in that space. I say tables as opposed to merchants because some merchants have 1 table, some want 2. So if you say, I can have 8 tables set up, and maybe if you can only have 8, you're going to limit people to 1 table. That's a decision you can make too. Then you know how many merchants you can take. Are tables and chairs included in that space, or do they need to bring their own? And if you can, have assistance for setup and teardown. This is things like hauling stuff to people's cars. A lot of people want to do like setting up the table themselves because, you know, they know their product and they know how they want it to look. But again, you're providing that welcoming atmosphere if you say, oh, I'm so glad you've arrived. I got somebody to help you bring in your stuff. And then make sure you let them know what the time limits are. Like, we'd like everyone set up by 9 a.m. You can get in at 8. And we need everybody to be broken down and out of the space by 5. Whatever those time limits are, make sure that they're aware of them. Okay, accessibility. I have an entire 2-hour-long class on accessibility. It's up on YouTube. There's a link at the end. Highly recommend it. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it because I can talk for a long time about it. But definitely check it out or check out the handout and have a contact person that can answer questions about accessibility on site is always a good recommendation. Volunteers, have a coordinator. Work with them to assess the event's needs. Make sign up easy. If it is not easy to sign up, they are not going to volunteer. I promise you, I have seen it. I like using signup.com. It's really easy and I get like notifications to my phone. People that sign up get reminder emails like a couple days before. There's a couple other sites out there. That's the one I like to use. Keep the shifts short. Don't assign someone for 3 hours to something that's a one-day event. Like you're taking up half their event, they're less likely to sign up. So I like hour shifts the best. And make sure you thank them because a thank you goes a long way. And I like little tokens. I have little tokens that I've created that anyone that I can catch that volunteered for me gets like a little thank you token, and it's like a little pewter pendant on a piece of ribbon. Like it's not anything fancy, but just my little thank you. Youth activities, and Artemisia, you can correct me if any of this is wrong because I'm always nervous that I've got something wrong on here about youth activities. We have youth policies, we have them for a reason. And to the best of my knowledge, it's you must have a background checked adult member as a coordinator and you have to follow the 2 deep rule. Is there anything to add to that? Thumbs up, thumbs down. That's the basics. Yes. File a report after, and then I always recommend if you're going to have youth activities, put it on your website because people are specifically looking for that information when they're looking at events. There are 2 documents that I put the names in the bottom here that have a ton of information about youth activities that I really like those 2, so I would just recommend going and reading those for sure, or contacting our Minister of Youth if you have questions. Okay, Site Herald, just somebody to make announcements throughout the day. Runner's going to be somebody that's ready and willing to stop whatever they're doing and go fix anything. Like, we've run out of site sign-ins. I need to go print some. Or I ran out of butter because I miscounted when I was doing my math. We need butter. So running errands, both on and off site. And then if you can, I also recommend having an event steward page, especially in the morning during setup, because there will be times where like I have to be right here to take care of this, but I have a question that I need answered, and that person that can answer it is on the other side of the building, but I happen to have this person who's very able-bodied and excited to help that is willing to go run to the other side of the building, and they will do that. So if you need like a quick errand run, they're great for that. You know, they don't have to be like a constant shadow. If they're kind of in a central location, you can be like, hey, can you go check on, you know, and snag them. I have noticed a lot of kids love this job because they feel like they're involved and they are vital to the process, which they are, and it gets them excited about helping and volunteering. So, yeah, that's my spiel on that. Okay, setup. Have a setup crew if you can. If you have like a crew, then you know like these people are gonna work together, they're gonna get it done. Have that map, have a plan that we're gonna start at this time and we are going to do this room, then this room, then this room. I always recommend taking pictures before you get started if you are moving anything around, because you want to make sure that you put that stuff back exactly where you found it. And by the end of the day, your brain is not going to remember how every single room had its tables organized. It's also more efficient if you can just snap that picture, walk away, you know. And then for cleanup, again, have a cleanup crew. Remember that it's not just for the very end of your event. You can be cleaning up various parts of the event throughout the day. And sometimes you can build that into your schedule. Like you can say, this room we're only using until 2. Well, okay, at 2 o'clock, let's get that room cleaned up, reset, and done. Then we can walk away from it, and it's one less thing to do at the end of the day when everybody's tired and wants to go home. Remember to leave it better than what you started with, and use those pictures from when you arrived and be efficient. Other things are going to be things like if you have camping, obviously you want somebody that's a camping coordinator to keep track of who can camp where we can't camp, those kind of things. If you have equestrian activities, I'm sorry, I don't know anything about equestrian other than we have them. I have never been able to run something that had equestrian. I was on staff for something, but that was not my department. And then you might have other event activities that are specific to the event. Keep communication between departments, both before and during events. Have a way of communicating if you need to, like a walkie-talkie or cell phones, something like that. Because if you're on one side of the site, but somebody needs you and they're on the other side, you know, if they can quick call you or they can quick get on a walkie-talkie, things run more efficiently if answers get answered quickly. Questions get answered quickly. Okay. If you're going to invite royalty, here's what you do. You're going to send an email invitation to their chamberlain after calendar approval because they want to see that it's up on the calendar. If they say, yes, we're going to come, you have to decide on the comping tickets thing. It's pretty typical to comp like the royalty and their entourage. Like typically they don't travel with a lot. They'll travel with like 1 or 2 people, something like that. So that's a discussion to be had. Space for their stay, whether they're comfortable with crash space with a friend or they want to stay in a hotel, those kind of things. Those are things to be discussed. They might even have to be in your budget if you need to get a hotel room. You will need a royalty room and you will need a scribal room. Royalty rooms, typically you can ask their chamberlain what they want in there. It's usually stuff like bottled water, chairs, you know, like a comfy space that they can go away from everything else. And then you need somebody that's in, that did not come out right. If you have a royalty room, you need royalty room guards so that the space is guarded throughout the day so nobody goes in or out that's not supposed to. You also need a scribal room. If you're gonna have royals and you're gonna have court, you need a scribal room for them together and for them to have like their court meeting. Assign someone as the royalty liaison so that they can take care of the royals while they are there. And they will need retainers. Typically, you are not in charge of coordinating the retainers, but I always say double check just to make sure. Always better to know for sure somebody else has got that under control and I didn't need to cover it. But the royalty room guards you are in charge of setting up volunteers for. Excuse me, talked for an hour straight now. Okay. Court will have a herald in charge. You're not responsible for setting that person up. We have a person whose title escapes me off the top of my head, but they're in charge of setting up the heralds in charge for events. But things to keep in mind is space that's big enough for court and that you can hear. Have a tentative time scheduled, but be flexible, because we all know that court's one of those things that might start a little later, might start on time, maybe goes a little longer, we don't know. There are classes on running courts. There's a link at the end of this that I will show you guys. Okay, so getting your event on the calendar. After it's been approved, you want to get your event up on the calendar ASAP. So you access this from the main midrealm.org page, or you can go into the services portal. Ultimately, you're going to have to sign into the services portal. So you can really go both ways, but it's going to have you sign in one way or another. You submit the event info to the calendar. I'm going to show you what that looks like. And then keep in mind that the verification process now is that the host group's seneschal at their midrealm.org email will be contacted and asked to verify. So make sure that they have access to that email, because I have run into groups that have still not set those up. So that is the only way that they're going to see that email, is if they can get into there. Their seneschal is asked to confirm that the event is legit, and after that, it goes up on the calendar. And if you have any questions, you can email the calendar secretary, and they can guide you through this too, but I'm going to show you what it looks like. So if I go in here, again, whether you're going to have to log in anyway. So this is what it ends up looking like. This star over here on the left, you can see where your calendar of events is. So you click on the little arrow down, click on calendar of events, and that's when it's going to pop up. This right here is the calendar secretary, and that's a clickable link with their name. This just happens to be the current person when I took the screenshot. And then over here is the button to actually add an event. So when you click that, this is what you're going to get. And you just fill in the blanks. So it's nice and easy peasy. Just fill in the group, fill in all of the info, and you're good to go. And then it'll send that request out for verification. Okay, your website, keep it easy to access, easy to read, watch those fonts and colors again, and include as much information as possible, because the more information people have, the more likely they are to get excited about attending your event, because they are looking forward to the things that you are offering. These are all of the things that I like to include. And again, I throw the bullying policy on there because I consider it a publication, and I like to have it on there because sometimes you'll get people that aren't familiar with the SCA that just stumbled upon your website and want to come to your event. I want to make sure that they've seen what we're all about. So that's my own thing. Like I said, I consider it a publication. I'm not sure if it's actually required to have it on there or not. Social media. We have social media officers now. We have some social media rules. There's a handbook. It just came out like a couple of weeks ago. It's in the Library of Documents if you want to go read it. But the main thing to remember that's relevant to this conversation is that Facebook event pages at the moment, right now, have to be made from the host group's page, not the group, the page. Remember, Facebook has pages and groups. I know that's confusing, but the host group's page is who has to make the event page for an event. Social media is awesome for advertising and quick updates. And they have this thing where you can schedule posts. So I like to use the scheduling option because I don't have to spend a lot of time individually. I can set up a bunch of posts and they just like auto post at certain times. So as the event gets closer, I will post more and more updates, because then it stays relevant to people and they are seeing the updates, they're seeing the things that are going to happen, they're getting excited about it. Insurance. Okay, so there's a full document on how to request insurance. I'm going to just kind of touch on the highlights here. The document exists, SCA.org's library of documents, not Middle Kingdom's. You will not find it in there. Well, you might find it in there, but you're going to have to search for it a lot. Oh, excuse me. But if you go to SCA.org and you click on the library documents, it's actually on the main page. So it's pretty easy to find. What you should keep in mind is that it was revised in January of this year. So if you have previously printed it or saved it, go in there and make sure you've updated your copy of it. I had to do that this year for my event. The event coordinator has to verify their membership is up to date through the event date, which we talked about a little bit earlier. And then this is event steward, sorry, I don't know why I said coordinator, but they're going to request coverage based on what your contract with the site wants. Some sites don't need insurance at all. Some want something that's very specific. Some just want to know you have it. So there's a lot of different types of insurance that you need, and it's all going to be outlined in your contract. And so you can request different types. You need to have this a minimum of 30 days prior to the event. And keep in mind that different policies will have different fees added to them. So like a basic policy confirmation doesn't cost anything as long as you've gotten it in the request in time. If you have a late, like if you're after the, or within that 30 days before, then you're going to have a late fee. Trust me, you don't want the late fee. It's like $175. It's a lot of money just to throw out there to not have done this on time. So plan early. But then certain other policies, like I think if you have a golf cart, there's an additional thing, and if you have alcohol, there might be an additional thing. So if the site requires it, so different things can have different things tacked on, but your basic one is free. So also keep in mind with your budget, another thing to budget for. The PAIL. Okay, so the PAIL has a full guideline and actual templates that you can just fill in your info. If you go to the Library of Documents page, it's under Chronicler and then under PAIL. Keep in mind that the PAIL submissions run 2 months prior to the month that they're going to appear. So make sure you get it in time for your event to actually be properly advertised. I'm not going to go in a lot of detail, but I did put this in here because this is the important part. If you're having any of these things listed here, you have to have an ad in the PAIL. Otherwise, it can't be an official thing. So put your PAIL ad in. The basic ad doesn't cost anything, so it's not really an expense. It doesn't take that much time. Just get it done. Okay, so we've done all this prepping, and now it's event time. So you've done all your shopping. You've dropped everything off. Life is grand. Make sure you have acquired keys while their office was open. You would think you wouldn't have to say that. You were going to remember that you need keys. But I'm here to tell you, put it on your to-do list because it's easy to forget. Have an established timeline with everybody that's helping. I like to have one last little meeting, like that week of the event. Just saying we're starting at this time, we're going to do this, then we're going to do that, then we're going to do that. Make sure everybody's on the same page. Remember to sleep. Remember to eat. Remember to hydrate. Be flexible. Like things don't always go as planned. You can plan and plan and plan and plan and plan and plan. Something can still go wrong, and having a backup plan or being flexible and thinking quick on your feet is going to make your day go a lot smoother in the long run. I'm sorry, I haven't talked this long in a long time. You have departments set up. You have people that you have put in these positions to execute their specific departments. Trust your people, but don't forget to check in on them. So ultimately you're their leader, right? You want to make sure that they have the support that they need to do their job. Okay, quick notes on being an event steward. This is, I believe, in the Seneschal's Handbook if you wanted to look it all up. But it basically boils down to this. If somebody's breaking the rules, you can't ask them to leave. That's really what it comes down to. If somebody refuses to pay site costs, if you see somebody just walk on past troll and never come back, or gate, sorry, we call it gate now. You see somebody walk on by, they didn't sign in, they didn't sign a waiver, they go about their day. Now, sometimes people will drop stuff off and then they'll come back, like that's legit. But people notice sometimes that people will purposely not go through gate. You can always ask them, say, hey, I think we missed you when you came in the door. Do you want to go get that paperwork settled now real quick? You know, try to keep it casual at first, but if they get rude, you can totally ask them to leave. It is within your rights. And again, if somebody's being dangerous in their behavior or doing something that violates your site contract, like if your site contract says no alcohol on site and you see somebody with their flask that's like in the corner, if you've got all of that posted that there's no alcohol on site, they have violated the rules of your event. They have put your group potentially at risk of breaking their contract, right? You don't want that. You can ask them to leave if they get, you know. So remember, you do have that power if you need to use it. And you should always work with the seneschal on that if you're going to have to ask someone to leave, because you have to report that afterwards and report why they were asked to leave. So make sure you work together with your seneschal. All right, good on time, except that I'm like not able to talk. So the event is done. You have iced your feet, you have slept, and now you've got your post-event stuff to do. So first and foremost, make sure that you thank everybody that helped you. You know, no event runs by one person alone. It takes so many people to put on an event, and make sure you say thank you to all of them. I always recommend having a post-event meeting because you can really discuss what worked, what didn't. You can learn a lot in that post-event meeting because you will see what worked for you as the event steward, but somebody else will see what worked for the event that maybe you didn't see because you were somewhere else doing something else, because you're kind of all over the place. You know, you can't have your eyes everywhere all at the same time. So I always think that post-event meeting is a great opportunity to learn and make things better for the next time. If you're going to have a reoccurring event, I think it's vital to have this post-event meeting. Absolutely vital. If it's a one and done, you can still learn and make the next time that you're in that position better. So let's talk about paperwork again, because again, we love our paperwork. So generally speaking, you've got a max of 30 days to get all of this stuff done. But the sooner that it is done and out of your hands, I promise you, you will be so excited. Just be like, I'm finished, I'm good. So you'll have an event report, you'll have a non-member fee paper, and a check to write. You'll have all of your waivers. All of your waivers go to the waiver deputy. You're going to mail them to this person or email them. They want them either both or hard copy. So if you can scan and email them, they still want the hard copies. So either way, you have to mail them. They go to the waiver deputy, which you can find that person under the office of the seneschal. They are listed, they're one of the deputies of the seneschal on the midrealm.org page. So you can contact them and get their information on where to send that. Remember that ANS, Marshall, and Youth Activities all have their own reports that the department heads, whoever was in charge of those things, will be filing. You don't have to, but always nice to check in on your departments and make sure they've got the support and they understand what they needed to do and they were good to go. And then you'll have a reimbursement request for any expenses that you put out. So I'm going to talk about some of these other papers and forms so you can see what they look like. the event report. This is it's an Excel thing, but it's longer, so I apologize. It's actually going to be spread over to the next 2 slides, but it's just because it was too long and I didn't want to shrink it so you couldn't read it. That budget form we talked about earlier, it's in that same document. It is the second sheet of that Excel spreadsheet. So you've already got this saved on your computer theoretically because you used it earlier. It gets mailed and emailed copy to the regional exchequer, and then your event steward and your exchequer should keep a copy for themselves as well. So this is the top half of it. And you can see it's really just, it's filling in numbers. It is the number of people you had, the prices, the income amounts. So it's a lot of fill in the blank. And again, remember we talked about that little slip earlier? This is where double checking, you had those little slips, comes in so much help here if you've got like one number that's just not adding up and you can go back and double check it. This is the bottom half of it. That's going to have your expenses. There you can see your non-member fees that you're going to have to send. And if there's any profit sharing, there's your profit sharing stuff gets plugged into there. And then you'll see at the bottom, the seneschal, the exchequer, and the event stewards all sign this. This is the non-member form that gets mailed with your check. This is sheet number 3 on that form. So those are the 3 parts of that Excel spreadsheet. You have your budget, you have your event report, and you have the non-member report. This gets printed and it goes with a check to the Kingdom Exchequer, which you can find their information on the Office of Exchequer. I didn't want to put, a specific person on here, obviously, because that office changes person and you're mailing it to them. Okay, reimbursement forms. So keep all of your receipts. Make sure you're adding them up and you're staying within your original budget so that doesn't sneak up on you. And you remember we talked about earlier how your exchequer was going to separate out the different things? That's where this comes in handy. When you make purchases, separate them out when you make the purchase. So if I am going to buy, let's say I go with the feast steward and we are buying everything. We're going to buy all the feast stuff, all the supplies for the event, everything. Every different itemized thing needs to be on a separate receipt. All of the feast expenses should be on their own endeavor because your exchequer has to account for all of the feast expenses in and of its own. And then all of your other stuff, you should separate them out because you're going to have to separate them out on this reimbursement form, and it just makes it so much easier. So you can find this form under reimbursement forms under exchequer in the Library of Documents. The forms themselves stay on record with your local exchequer in with the event paperwork. They just hold on to that for X number of years. This is what it looks like. This is the top half of it. Again, this is another document that's like a longer and it was hard to squeeze into one slide. But this is what it looks like. So you can see here. So like for receipt name, I would put like Walmart, Hy-Vee, whatever, whatever the name of the place I shopped at was, the date of the receipt. And then these are how they're all split up. So they can write you one check for everything, but for the sake of how the money was spent, they need to see it separated, if that makes sense. Then on the bottom here is like, this is the check that they're going to be writing out. So you'll want one of these for every person. Did somebody just ask something in the comments? I think that's why my screen just does that. No? Maybe I touched something. Okay, never mind. Just laugh at me, it's all good. You want to do this for every person because you can see it's asking for the person's information up here. So every person that has expenses needs to fill one of these out. Then this is the bottom part of it. This part you rip off and you give to the person with the check. So it's kind of like their receipt that they've been reimbursed. And if you look, it's pretty much identical to the bottom part of this right here, where it tells the exchequer on this date and this check number, I wrote a check to so-and-so for that amount. It's pretty much the same exact thing, but this is the copy that they get to keep for their own records. Okay, my last little reminder is to remember to have fun. Being the event steward can be stressful, but I promise you that if you're stressed, your staff will be stressed, and it has a trickle-down effect. So remember to have some fun yourself. And the more that you plan, like the more prepared you are, I feel like the less stressful it is, because you know you've got your ducks in a row. You just watching them waddle across the water all happy like, right? So have some fun. Try to find joy in the joy around you is what I try to tell people. So when you're exhausted and your feet are swollen and you've got them propped up on someone's armor bag, but you look around and everyone's having fun, you're like, yeah, we did this, you know? It's always, I don't know, makes the day better. Other classes to take, shameless self-promotion. That first one is mine. I teach a class on accessibility. I am happy to talk accessibility anytime of the day if I'm awake. I'm happy to help you go through sites and see good things, bad things, whatever the case may be. We have these 3 classes are ones that are already up on YouTube because we've taught them on eRealm already. The second one, our diversity and inclusion officer, our society level officer has taught that one, inclusivity. And I see Andreas just pop up on camera, and coincidentally that last one is his.
I get name dropped like I have spider sense that goes on.
I took this class from him several years back, and it like opened my mind for real. I had no idea how to run a royal court, and even though I have no intention of being a herald in charge, as an event steward, I got a lot out of taking that class and understanding how that was going to fit into the event. So I definitely recommend that one for sure. And then these are additional July classes as we're having our officers month that are really directly connected to event running. So keep an eye out for them. The hosting a kingdom level event is also mine. I am the current Middle Kingdom events coordinator. So I'm going to be talking about how to put in a bid for a kingdom level event and some of the site requirements and other requirements and whatnot. So check those out, check out all the other classes, and then check out the YouTube Run channel later if you've missed them. And sure, we're going to have a lot of other great stuff coming up. So I'm going to stop sharing. And we have just a few minutes left if anyone has any other questions. I know it's a lot of information. Yeah. So that's it. If nobody has any questions, then that's pretty much it. Hopefully that demystifies some of the paperwork for you.
It was a very good class.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for coming.
Thank you for teaching it.
All right. Well, thank you guys for coming.
Thank you. We'll get this up online as soon as we can.
Awesome. Thank you guys so much. Thank you for our hosts and everything.
Okay. Now go
Yeah, so
enjoy.
somebody's saying here that all of the information isn't in one place and I've had to learn the hard way. I 100% agree. Like I said, you saw the big binder at the beginning. This is the binder that has paperwork references in it. So I've actually taken, like, I went through all of the handbooks, and like the Seneschal's handbook has this section on events, but then the Exchequer handbook has this section on events. And I printed out all of the miscellaneous sections that show up in different handbooks and have used that as my guide for years. But the information changes and you really have to like try to keep up with it. And I totally agree. It can be a struggle for sure. So that's the other reason I wanted to do this class, was to kind of combine everything and put it into one spot a little bit easier. So, cool. Well, thank you guys for coming. Have a good night.